welcome back to another episode of Artist to Artist presented by Artist Republic. Obviously, I'm Nick. This is Christian. This is a super special episode because we are in the same place together, probably for the first time ever. Because obviously we started this in the middle of the pandemic. Christian's out in LA. I'm on the East Coast. Now, Christian is here as a special guest. So if you're watching on YouTube or anywhere where there's actually a video, you can see us both in one place in the Artist Republic HQ in Providence, Rhode Island. So also, please remember, give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts, share it with your friends, share it with other fellow musicians. It really does help us get the word out and also help spread the knowledge that we are dropping every single week with different artists and people in the music industry. So with that, let's start off with the first piece of knowledge. Christian, what's in the news today, my man?
Yeah, so today there was an article that came out that is discussing the staff of a company called the Secretly Group has decided to basically unionize. They are one of the top independent music companies in the United States. And on Tuesday morning, they announced they were going to be forming a union. And to quote, it says, to address a list of concerns that they're hoping to correct with a union contract. I honestly am not well versed in music unions, so I don't know if this is a new thing or if it's just something to add on to the list of unions that are there. But overall, Nick, what do you think?
So personally, I think, I don't know, unions are an interesting thing for me. I never know how effective they truly are, but it's interesting. I think, especially on the independent artist side, they need that. And that structure most of the time doesn't hurt. It can hurt, but most of the time, for the most part, it doesn't hurt. But truly, I think I'm unbiased on that. I think, I'm kind of, indifferent. I think it's just going to be something interesting to watch and, see how it goes. All right, so bringing in our next guest. Our guest today is John, the founder of Nervefm, a platform that we will be diving into heavy during this episode. Prior to founding Nerve, John spent 15 years leading project management, R&D, and user experience at Kasasa, a fintech company serving over 800 banks, credit unions, and millions of consumers nationwide. Innovations under John's leadership had earned Kasasa 4 Finovate Best of Show titles, recognition in Fast Company's 10 most innovative companies in finance, and a standing in the FinTech Top 100. Previously, John founded First ROI, which was the first company to drive online business for community banks and credit unions. It was acquired in 2010 by BankView, which then later became Kasasa, which was acquired in 2015 by Riverside Partners. John runs 2 music labels, including the Preservation Project, which restores and releases lost music from the 1920s and 1980s. John is a keynote speaker in financial technology, a fintech consultant, and in his book, Bankruption, How Community Banking Can Survive Fintech, is available on Amazon. So with that, let's dive in, learn more about Nerve. Don't worry, we won't get too deep into fintech over here, but we will be diving into the music side of everything that John's been working on.
Actually, I guess it starts before that a little bit. I'd say it was in mid to late 90s. And I was in college in Chicago at a school called Columbia College. It's a liberal arts school there. And I had a bunch of bills, and I decided, I kind of conned myself into thinking maybe I could pay off some of these bills by spinning rare funk and soul music. And I had a number of buddies who were already doing it, so they kind of brought me in. And as I was spinning this really rare vinyl, I started romanticizing this idea. What would happen if this guy who thought that he had only sold maybe 5 copies of this 45 in his entire existence, and nobody really liked his music, and maybe had passed away without any money to his name? If that guy walked in right now while I was playing his track and there were 400 people dancing to it, like what he might feel, the joy he might actually sense. And so that romance to me, it just like instantly snapped in my brain. Oh my goodness, I wonder if there are other artists like this. And of course there are. And so around the late 90s, I started collecting acetates and reel-to-reels of a music that was never published, but from artists who were seemingly lost to time. you know, for whatever reason or another, you just couldn't find these people on the planet. And at that time, of course, it was really difficult to try to find, track people down, but there were a number of really talented musicologists and stuff who were doing that. I decided to wait instead for technology to catch up and for it to become cheaper to actually find these people. And you started to see things like Music Genome Project and all that stuff that eventually kind of Pandora and all that stuff came from. Somewhere around 2016, and I'm skipping over all the fintech stuff, but somewhere around 2016, technology had gotten cheap enough to move this material from reels to back to digital and then back to vinyl. So I started a real small label called Preservation Project, and that's specifically to release. I initially started with funk and soul music, but I have music from the 1920s to the 1980s of just unreleased music that from musicians who I want to find. I want to find either them or their families and reconnect them to this music and hopefully allow them to earn some money off of it. And so I started releasing this music on vinyl, and in hopes to reconnect these people and saving money for those families. And with Preservation Project, it was a lot of fun, and we were actually able to reunite a few artists who had been lost with their music. And it was just an incredible experience. I mean, here, you know, I'm not sure, in your minds you might be thinking, wow, what kind of lawsuits is John setting himself up for? To be honest, I'm probably setting myself up for some serious lawsuits. I don't know. But these artists, their humanity and their sense of just like love for the music was what poured through. And they were like, oh my goodness, thank you so much for reconnecting me. You know, and what little money I was able to give them, obviously we did, but that, you know, that sense of joy is just, it's an incredible experience. And so what ended up happening is the label got kind of this small but global following. And so people from Norway or Sweden or whatever would write in and say, hey, why does it cost, you know, $25 to ship a 7-inch to Norway? And you know, just put it up on Spotify. If you put this music up on Spotify, I can listen to it and everybody be happy. And I realized while that might stop my headache of getting like bad Instagram messages, it wasn't the fiduciary responsible thing to do for these unknown artists. I see myself in a lot of ways as like the protector of their content, and so that wasn't the right thing to do. So for me, from a financial perspective, I felt like you know, I might earn them a dime over 10 years. And so that's whenever I pulled a buddy of mine who we've been creating products for the last 15 years in the fintech space, and saying, you know, hey, you know, let's investigate everything that's out there. Let's check out these other music streaming platforms. And what we found was kind of a hole in the market, and that's what we're trying to fill with Nerve.
Awesome. Well, yeah. So let's dive perfectly into that. What is Nerve? Where is it going? Let's give everyone, you know, kind of an idea of, you know, what it is.
Sure. So Nerve is you know, the way it looks today is it's a streaming platform that pays artists recurring revenue. The thing that's really, really important to me, coming from the fintech world, financial technology world, and the SaaS world, is recurring revenue. If you're an entrepreneur, what you want to see is a check almost guaranteed to come in each month, right? That's a really nice comfort. In you know, you still have to be competitive, you still have to do all the things, but at the same time, knowing that you've got some kind of stability in your life is certainly something that's absent with a lot of musicians, and something that we felt we could really solve from a business model standpoint with streaming. We also so Nerve is a streaming platform that pays recurring revenue, really sizable recurring revenue between $1.50 to $3 a month to the artists. And in some ways, it kind of looks like maybe something that's a really I would say a more usable, more music-driven version of something like Patreon, where you would subscribe to a musician. But at the same time, what we solve there is a lot of times whenever you subscribe just to one musician, those types of platforms where you subscribe just to one service, they have really high churn rates. People, you know, I think I'm Nick's biggest fan. and I'm going to subscribe to Nick for $5 a month. And I can't wait to hear all the stuff he has after about 3 months. Like, I'm kind of tired of Nick. And I convinced myself, oh, I'll resubscribe to Nick in a year. And to be quite honest, I probably don't. So that's nice. It gives some artists a shot in the arm, but also at the same time, it also puts a lot of onus on the artist to constantly create new content. You got to always come up with new content. So I keep Nick around, which obviously can really harm the artistic side of the brain. And so, so what we realized is we needed a platform that was actually a discovery platform, something more similar to the discovery platforms in the market like Spotify or Apple Music, where they offer a nice variety. Obviously, those guys offer a huge variety of content, but at the same time, we wanted the non-catalog content. So specifically, we're going after, if you think about my preservation project world, we're going after content that is not the typical stuff you would find on Spotify or Apple Music. It's not the typical releases. We realized, if you're a fan of music today, which you guys are, and let's say that you're a fan of Nick the artist, you have to go to about 7 or 8 different platforms to piece together Nick's discography today. If you want to call it a discography, to piece together his life, you've got to go to SoundCloud, and then maybe you find like this dude named John Waupsh who was in Nick's show 10 years ago and had a recording from the soundboard, and he's got it up on his version of SoundCloud, and that's cool. But how am I ever going to listen to it again? And what am I going to refer to it? And why isn't Nick making money on this thing? Because he's the artist after all. And then the same thing may exist on YouTube and Twitch, and the proliferation of all these services. And so really what's happening here is this, it's an alignment between artists, in our opinion, are not getting paid the money that they need to be getting paid. And fans are not getting the navigational, if you want to sum it to the most mundane way, navigational experience or user experience they should have. If I'm a fan of Nick's, I should have access to all this content and be able to play that content in a way that's actually usable, not bouncing out to Vimeo and bouncing out to YouTube, and then a phone call comes in and the whole thing is shot, and the terrible user experience that you'll see on other kind of desktop first platforms. But instead something that's much more about intentional listening, which is really what we're into. That idea, the metaphor of taking the record out of the vinyl and placing it on and then you got the stylus and moving that over, that whole intentional listening experience to us, getting deeper into the music is something that we really would like to deliver to the user.
I like that. And okay, now I'm not on mute. I do like that. And I want to, dive into, kind of my first question, which is around payment. Because ironically, the world has gotten better for artists to get out there, but the world has gotten worse for them to actually make money. Yeah. They've had to diversify their revenue, 10x over the past couple of years. And so, my big question for you is, also with Nerve, but also with other platforms, how do you see, kind of the independent music world over the next 5 or 10 years, where more platforms like Nerve and like Artist Republic and all these platforms are coming out, where artists now have more ways to make money? How do you see that changing the music industry?
It's gonna be really exciting. I mean, presuming, I think there's what I've seen in the last, I'd say 5 years, and it's just growing more and more. I mean, certainly there's been a cacophony of this over the last year, just because I think there's a lot more artists who are on platforms shouting the same thing, which is, no one was here for us. When I lost 95% of my revenue through touring, I looked around and I realized, oh crap. I didn't really have the maybe the avenues of revenue that I had thought, or perhaps the diversification of revenue sources that I was hoping. And so you do start to see there's so many really, really interesting things that are happening in music tech today and beyond, and everything from, I'm a heritage artist and I'm thinking about, how that hologram concert experience is actually really going to work. We saw stints of it in 2010 or 2012 or whatever that was, but as it's as these companies start to really mature and as the technology matures, there's some real interesting stuff there. There's obviously newer things that are kind of spin off of, I want an actor to tell me happy birthday for $100. There's stints that are now, well, I'd like this musician to sing me this song for $150 or whatever, or sing, Nick a birthday song for $150. And so, there's definitely, layers of additional revenue sources that are being made available to artists, and I think all of that is well and good. It's funny, I was listening to your podcast. I wanted a couple, maybe it wasn't too long ago. You had a guy on there, and he had suggested the move, and he'd used kind of the metaphor of the accountant moving to using QuickBooks, but there was the technology Sherpa almost move of the manager, right? Where managers now kind of moving into helping the artist find even more of these technological ways to kind of advance their career. And I think that's a dead on point. I mean, the more managers we've talked to over the last year in particular, the more they some seem really, really excited about, I don't know if it's disruption or it's just this, a confluence of ideas that maybe are happening that are disruptive to the older scheme, where how do we put the artist first? How do we put the listener first? Kind of marry them together in a more financially beneficial arrangement.
I like that. And so I'm going to go on one more thing before I pass it over to you, Christian, because I've definitely been owning, the initial convo. And, obviously we can go into lightning after too, but fintech is obviously, like, for the past 5 years has been the sexiest thing. And for us, being a music tech company, music tech is still very early and it's not sexy yet. And so my question for you is, from a music technology side and sexiness, what do you see in that compared to, the fintech market? Like, what does music tech have to do to become sexy, like Bitcoin and fintech and, stuff like that?
Yeah. In 2005 or whatever, when I started getting into fintech, and we had a phrase, and then I would say it was, sure, it was the whole, bringing sexy back, right? It was the whole bringing sexy back to banking, and I don't know if that was 2010 or whenever the heck that Justin Timberlake song came out, 2005, whenever it was somewhere around then. And it was a hilarious joke because at the time it was just so uber nasty and nerdy, and really what you were trying to get through was so many different obfuscated data flows. So the preponderance of the work, certainly, that sexy fintech companies today, what they live on and what they enjoy is so much nasty work that has been done, and I would say the work is definitely nowhere near done, of cleaning up a mismatched spaghetti bowl of data flows between incongruent data and old school providers who were not happy sharing that data with anybody. And a number of things kind of came to fruition to actually help kind of peel those layers back to enable the companies of today to look sexier. But all of those things are things that we see very similar in music today. And so when and I try not to name too many different groups, especially, but you can imagine groups today that are responsible for either royalty payouts or somehow connect artists to getting paid and all of these types of things that probably until the last few years were on index cards. Like, that data sat on freaking index cards. The exact same thing happened until probably 2000. And this is not, don't quote me on this, but my guess is until probably 2005, credit bureau data sat on index cards. All right. I mean, it was just, it was garbage data, and it still is in many ways. But you see so many interesting companies in music tech that are taking advancements or came from other industries where this was a prevalent problem, and they're solving these problems, right? They're working very quickly to kind of help unplug and replug the pipes so that this data is available and informative. And that's really that's what enables companies to look sexy, right? Because now you're able to, for instance, like, with Nerve, we believe very strongly that the data belongs to the artist, and that and enabling the artist with data, with the insights from the data, is exceptionally important. I can't tell you how many artists I've talked to. Typically, those who are under 40 have all shared some story with me that they have a friend in technology at some company, and their friend in technology at some company said, wait a second, you have no idea who your fans are? And like, no, I see their likes on Facebook or whatever. No, but you can't reach them? No, what kind of business is that? Who runs their business that way, right? And so the number of younger artists, I think, who have come around to this point that, oh my God, I need to control my data. I need to, and that allows me to take control of my career in a way that if again 85% or 90% of my revenue goes out the window one day, I now have a different mastery over where I'm headed as a small business. And so anyway, so I think that's a big win for fixing the data issue on the music side is a big win for will be a big win for companies as well as musicians.
And I definitely agree with that data side, because when I used to host concerts, there are venues that I worked with that still I work with, I will not still work with, but like still I guarantee you do the same things, which was like, there were venues that their accounting and their bank account was literally envelopes with the show name on it in a filing cabinet behind a double locked door. That was their bank account. Like the music world, and it's funny though, because it's exactly like in the fintech, like you're saying, the credit bureaus, like they use index cards, but they used index cards and they took so long to change because they were bureaucracy. Mm-hmm. The music industry doesn't really have a bureaucracy. They just are like, why do I change? Like a music venue is like, well, we squeak out some money, we do this, we do that, but we love music. And it's funny because I'll talk to investors and they're like, well, why don't people do it like this? Or how are they still doing it like that? And it's like, well, listen, guys, there's a difference between a music person and a business person. Mm-hmm. And you have to understand that 90% of people in the music industry, I would say 99%, are not doing it for money.
Right.
They're genuinely doing it because they love music. Like I started Artist Problem because I was like,
just give me a guitar and a microphone and I'm good to go. Right. I don't want that stuff. Yeah.
Exactly. So that's definitely, and getting them to adapt to being like, hey, you got to treat this as a business is like, wait, hold on. It's you're taking all the love out.
I know. But I believe very strongly, or rather, and also maybe I believe very strongly that, and maybe it's totally. I mean, we could be totally wrong. I believe that that there's so much transparency. There's more and more transparency in this world, whether it's in business or anywhere else, that and so much inertia towards transparency that that the only way to have a viable company in music over the next 20 years, maybe the next 10 years, is to unravel the data for the musicians, to pay them what they deserve. And by the way, I also include songwriters in this as well, obviously. Music people, if you want to say it that way. And pay them what they deserve, and look out for them financially.
Yes, let's do that.
Cool. Okay. So basically, we're going to ask you a couple just random questions that we grab off the internet. and you just got to hit us with the first thing that comes to mind.
Okay.
Cool. Let me grab.
Hey, Nick,
my
I think
first one.
you went off. Did you go off mute or something? There's an echo now, at least on my side.
I think it's because I'm off mute, but I can go on mute while he's talking.
Okay. All right. Good enough.
Yeah, we will simultaneously mute and unmute. This will be talented right here. Let me actually prep my screen to simultaneously mute and unmute. Okay. What is the most fun thing that someone could have in their backyard?
I personally think a roller coaster would be the greatest thing ever. But here's the thing. So roller coaster, yeah, maybe you get too used to it. After like maybe the 400th time around, you're like, okay, this is where this thing is. But back in the day when I was a kid, I'm sure they still exist. There was this thing called at Carnival, which they called a bullet. And they put two people facing one direction, two people facing the other direction. It was like this conical shaped thing. And it would just go round and around and around, real high, it was probably a couple stories in the air, but it felt like you were, 3,000 feet in the air. And it just kept going in one circle. There was nothing more to it than it would just like take you up in the air. But it was the most incredible. If I could relive that experience, I would love that in my backyard. I looked it up the other day. It's about $200,000 to get one of those. So it's not, it's not like beyond it's a house. If you wanted to buy a second house, you could get the bullet in your backyard and have a great time. And it comes with a little truck or a big truck, so you can move it around other people's backyards, right? So other people.
That's an investment.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
All right, that's actually pretty sweet. I think, 200,000 is relatively affordable, depending on who you are and how much money you make.
Totally. And if you do want to make money on it, you could probably charge $1 a ride, and after a couple lifetimes, pay it off.
Exactly. I'm going to move into my question, and this one is a fun one. So if you could have dinner, a steak dinner, for example, with 3 people dead or alive, who would they be?
Oh, Christian. I would first of all choose James Booker, only because he's a music idol of mine and has did lead a crazy life, and I'd love to hear his stories. He'd probably just run away in the middle of it, scared of some CIA business or whatever. But I would absolutely love to talk to that guy. My dad, he passed away a few years ago, and I'd love to see him again. I don't know if I can name a third. Here's the thing. For me, when a dinner has more than a couple of people at it, I shut down. There's too many people, too much stuff. I'm not into that. So maybe just a three dinner, 3-person party, and probably more delicious steak. Now you don't have to buy the cheaper steak to go around. Yeah. More wine for me. My dad never drank wine. I don't know about James Booker, but anyway, so I think I'll just keep it there for now.
Cool. All right. So going off of that, what is your favorite movie?
My favorite movie of all time, always growing up, ended up being, of course, just a big mismatch of stuff with Star Wars. But and I say mismatch of stuff because like Mandalorian. Well, Mandalorian's incredible. Holy crap. Are you kidding me right now? Like that, what a great series. And then now I've heard there's like 10 more series based off of it. I'm never going to be able to follow all this stuff. I don't have this much time. But Indiana Jones is another, like the whole the trilogy was really the first one was always really interesting to me as a kid. The idea of, I feel in many ways with Preservation Project, we're kind of like Indiana Jones, but for music. And that's always fun. I've got, a couple of people that I work with very deeply on the Preservation Project, and a number of people around the world who donate like acetates and stuff to the project now. And I think they all kind of see themselves in the same way, kind of archaeologists of music. helping to connect connections that were broken or severed somewhere along the way.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I like that.
You want to go mute so there's no echo?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, it's not that bad. It's not that bad.
Well, it's bad for me because I get to edit it and I'd have to figure out how to cut down the echo. So I'm glad you pointed it out.
Poor Kristen, didn't get to talk much and has to do the editing work.
It's okay. It happens. That's just all part of the job. I got a classic one for you. If you were trapped on an island with one snack to eat for the rest of your life, what would it be?
This is a terrible one. This is probably the total wrong thing to say. Avocados. I love avocados, but I haven't researched whether or not that's a good thing to be stuck with. You know how like people are like, oh yeah, don't eat the coconuts because those like give you dysentery or whatever, and you know you'll be the worst thing ever. I'm not a survivalist, but I do know that avocados are delicious. And
they're delicious, and I mean, I feel like they're good for you, maybe in moderation. But if you had them for the rest of your life, I don't know what would happen. You could replant them too, so like you'd have an unlimited supply.
That's a great point. And also, if I'm stuck eating like island rats. And I was thinking about this the other day, like, you know, the reason why bubonic plague probably spread the way it did is people were just throwing like rats into the food. Like nobody knew any better. Right. I don't know. I should do some research. But if I had to eat island rats, I think they taste better with avocado.
I think so. I think the avocado definitely adds like a level of flavor that's unmatched. Nick, that was my last one. You want to wrap us up?
I can wrap us. But with that, I was going to say, while thinking about survivalists, what if you just brought like a dozen and a half of eggs, ate half of them, and then let the other half grow into chickens, and then you were able to farm the chickens to make yourself more eggs?
Well, that's a cool idea, but you do know that that those are different types of eggs.
Yeah, but
we can have a science class later.
Yeah. In theory. That's like I read an article a while back. It was with Bill Gates said that. It was like, you know, if you were to survive in a third world country with no money, what was one thing you would bring? And he goes, I'd bring chickens. Mm-hmm. Because I can grow more, I can make eggs, sell the eggs, make more chickens, also then sell the chickens. And he's like, I think he like calculated it where like growing a chicken farm will make you at least $5 a day, which is above the average of $2.50 a day. And he's like, so if you're ever in a third world country, you just need to acquire chickens. And that's how you survive. Chickens.
Bill Gates has done so much in the world of, helping individuals around the world earn sustainable income. Mm-hmm. And he's written, there's been several books to that effect and everything else. It's just really, he's done a lot. There's also an amazing documentary on him that came out recently on Netflix.
Yes.
Did you see that one? Where it was like maybe a 3-part series or something like that. It was awesome. Just an incredible.
It blew my mind.
Yeah.
So good.
I will let you kick off first questions of this half. I have more questions, but like I'm going to get too deep down a rabbit hole. So before I get in a rabbit hole, I'm going to mute myself and give it to you because
wow, well done,
rabbit hole again. I know. I could have gone down Bill Gates rabbit hole for like the next 3 hours. So we're just gonna remove myself from that one.
All right, cool. Well, I think that'll wrap up the lightning round question. That was cool. Pretty cool. Good answers, especially with the avocado. I do want to kind of take it back to kind of what we were talking about more at the beginning. When we're talking about nerve, and you were talking a little bit about intentional listening, and I was curious, from your perspective, do you see nerve as more of a way for super fans to engage with their favorite artists, or do you see that being more of like an expansion into bringing more, I guess, super fans, for lack of a better term, into the mix?
I actually see, so and this may be beyond maybe my own ignorance. Whenever I've done research on super fans, what I see is somebody like they're obsessed with Pearl Jam, and they buy all the Pearl Jam gear. They love Pearl Jam, and there's statistics around, that super fan is worth $2,500 a year or whatever to Pearl Jam. That's the way I see. I've understood the super fan. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Well, we see Nerve a little bit differently. We see it more like, instead of and there are platforms where, the super fans just subscribe just to you, and you're gonna, whatever, give them accordion lessons. I'm not sure why I chose the accordion, but whatever. We see it as Nerve is a platform for fans of music, period. And so it's much more about the intentionality around like listening to and enjoying music than like, and I'm not trying to knock this. I mean, it's got its own place. I'm in a doctor's office, or I'm at the dentist and I'm listening to a playlist that's over the speakers and all that stuff. And I'm glad that they have something that relaxes me or whatever. It's just, that's not Nerve. Nerve is for, certainly super fans are welcome to it because, hey, I'm a fan of Brother Deej. He just launched his channel on Nerve, and so I'm excited to see what he's going to bring. He's got a lot of really interesting content that he's made over the years. Excited to see that stuff, visual and audio content. At the same time, though, we hope to bring in fans of music enjoyment, and who are really about the music experience. And discovery is really interesting to them. They really like that. And also the idea of finding new gems that maybe I'm not really obsessed with Christian the artist, but I love this like really interesting thing that he did that didn't make it on an album for all of the reasons that we would all know, right? And so that is a fan of music who's then going to incorporate that track in their life in some way. And so that to us is really where Nerve sits from that music experience perspective.
I love that. And I think that's a really good way to kind of categorize Nerve in terms of the fan base that it would attract. Unfortunately, we're running out of time here, and I feel like we could keep talking about anything we've been talking about for hours on end, but I have to cut it off here. But I want to ask one last question, and that is, what is one piece of advice that you would give to someone in the music industry who may be just starting out and looking to get more into it and make it a career?
Wow. I wish I'd say don't listen to me. You know what I mean? Like, and really, I mean, I think a piece of advice for if you're an artist, you are a small business person, whether you like it or not.
Sure.
And that's probably the only like, I don't know if it's advice or not. It's just, it's recognize that early on. I've heard from a lot of artists who are more heritage artists who've been around for a while and have actually, done really well for themselves. There's some really interesting regret that's in there regarding maybe not necessarily taking as much control over the business side or wanting to engage in that as they thought that they wish they had. And so I would just leave it at that.
Awesome. I love that.
Yeah, I'm with you. So with that being said, John, I have already reached out to Lizzie to schedule a meeting with us over the next couple of weeks because we definitely need to talk more. I think there's definitely a lot of cool stuff between Nerve, Artist Republic, and so much stuff. But with that, I think this was probably one of my favorite conversations we've had. And we're going to be closing out this episode. So anybody listening, don't forget, check out nerve.fm. And don't forget, if you love this episode, please give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts. Share it with someone that may be into fintech, music, restoration, whatever. And with that, we will see you next week.